What happened when the undercover CEO stepped into his own luxury fashion boutique? He expected to find minor issues. What he uncovered was a toxic workplace ruled by fear and exploitation. Employees were overworked, mistreated, and pushed to their limits under a ruthless manager. But when the CEO revealed his true identity, everything changed. This is the story of how one decision exposed deep-rooted problems and led to a complete transformation. Stay tuned to see how real leadership can turn a broken system around. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories. Damien sat in his sleek, glass-walled office, staring at the growing stack of complaints piling up on his desk. As the founder and CEO of Lustra, a high-end fashion retail chain, he had built his company from the ground up, priding himself on elegant designs, exceptional customer service, and a strong company culture. But lately, the reports told a different story. Employees quitting without notice, customers complaining about poor service, and rumors of mistreatment by store management. The final straw came in the form of an anonymous letter from an employee at one of their flagship boutiques, detailing an environment of verbal abuse, impossible sales targets, and toxic leadership. His executive team dismissed the concerns, blaming labor shortages and high industry turnover. But Damien wasn't convinced. If people were quitting in droves, there had to be a reason. He had always believed that a company's success wasn't just about profits. It was about the people behind the brand. If something was broken, he needed to see it for himself. With that in mind, he devised a plan. He would go undercover, disguising himself as Daniel, a new part-time sales associate. He dyed his normally sleek brown hair a shade darker, trimmed his beard, and traded his tailored suits for a simple polo shirt, jeans, and sneakers. Using a fake resume and a new identity, he arranged to be hired at the boutique in question. As he stepped out of his office and into the world he had created, he had only one goal: to see firsthand what his employees were experiencing. And if the reports were true, changes were coming, starting with the people who had let this happen under his watch. The moment Damien, now Daniel, stepped into the Lustra flagship boutique, he could tell something was wrong. The store, nestled in one of the city's most prestigious shopping districts, was as visually stunning as ever. Spotless marble floors, golden racks filled with elegant designer pieces, and bright showroom lighting that made everything feel effortlessly luxurious. But beneath the surface, the atmosphere was anything but polished. Employees moved through the store hurriedly, yet tense, as if walking on eggshells. Customers lingered impatiently at the register, their frustration barely concealed as the lone cashier fumbled with purchases. Others wandered around, searching for help, but the sales associates were too overwhelmed to properly assist anyone. At the heart of the chaos stood Victor, the boutique's store manager, a broad-shouldered man in his 40s with a sharp suit and an even sharper temper. He barked orders from behind the counter but barely lifted a finger to help, watching his staff struggle while scrolling through his phone. Damien noticed how employees flinched when he spoke, their exhaustion visible in their stiff postures and weary expressions. One employee in particular stood out: Elena, a senior sales associate in her mid-20s, visibly pregnant yet moving faster than anyone else in the store. She seamlessly shifted between greeting customers, folding clothes, assisting at the register, and grabbing inventory from the back, all while forcing a professional smile. Sweat lined her forehead, and every few minutes she pressed a hand to her stomach, as if to steady herself. And yet Victor barely acknowledged her, except to criticize. Near the counter, a nervous young cashier, Leo, struggled with a payment issue. A customer sighed loudly, tapping their credit card against the counter in annoyance. Instead of stepping in to help, Victor shot Leo a glare and snapped, "Figure it out or get out of my way." Leo's hands trembled as he scrambled to fix the issue. Damien's jaw tightened. It was clear this wasn't just a bad day, this was the norm. Employees weren't just overworked, they were being pushed to their limits, belittled, and treated as disposable. Damien hadn't even started his first shift yet, but he already knew Victor was the problem and things were about to change. Damien barely had time to adjust before being thrown into the deep end. Victor handed him a stack of clothes and pointed toward the sales floor. "Fold these properly, keep the displays neat, and don't waste time chatting," he said, barely glancing at him before turning his attention back to his phone. There was no formal training, no explanation of store policies, just orders barked like commands. Despite his inexperience in retail, Damien quickly fell into the rhythm of the store, watching carefully as his fellow employees struggled to keep up with the unrelenting pace. Elena, despite being visibly exhausted, managed to juggle multiple tasks at once, greeting customers with a polite smile, restocking shelves, and assisting at the fitting rooms. But every time she paused for even a moment, Victor was on her case. "You're slowing everyone down, Elena. Maybe it's time you cut back on hours, unless you're planning on giving birth on the sales floor," he sneered, smirking as he adjusted his tie. Elena's face turned red, but she kept her head down, nodding slightly as she continued working. Damien clenched his fists, but for now he had to stay undercover. Over at the register, Leo was struggling again, this time with a complicated return transaction. The customer huffed impatiently, crossing their arms. Victor finally stormed over, shoving Leo aside without warning. "Are you completely useless or just slow? Do I need to do everything myself?" he snapped, punching in the transaction with exaggerated force. Leo bit his lip, staring at the ground, humiliated. Damien took a slow breath, suppressing the urge to react. He needed to gather more evidence to understand just how deep this problem ran. And what he saw was worse than he imagined. Staff, afraid to ask for help, forced to push themselves beyond their limits, and leadership that did nothing but tear them down. Then it happened. A customer accidentally spilled coffee on an expensive dress, and before Elena could even react, Victor stormed over, grabbing the dress and holding it up like it was a crime scene. "Do you know how much this costs? You're cleaning this up now," he barked at Elena. Damien had seen enough. He took a deep breath, his decision made. Victor's reign of terror was about to end. The tension in the boutique reached a boiling point as the evening rush kicked in. Customers flooded the store, some browsing the racks while others impatiently waited for assistance. The sales associates, already overworked and exhausted, scrambled to keep up. Damien moved between stations, folding clothes, assisting customers, and observing every detail. He had seen bad management before, but Victor's blatant disregard for his team was beyond anything he expected. Leo was once again struggling at the register, his hands shaking as he tried to process a complicated return. The customer sighed loudly. "Are we almost done here?" they snapped. Victor, standing near the fitting rooms with his arms crossed, barely looked up from his phone. "Leo, how are you still messing this up?" he barked. Without warning, he marched over and shoved Leo aside, aggressively taking over the transaction. "Honestly, if you can't handle something this simple, maybe you should find another job," he muttered under his breath. Leo's eyes dropped to the floor, his face burning with humiliation. He muttered an apology, but Victor was already ignoring him. Damien exhaled slowly, his patience wearing thin. Then, the final straw. Elena was carrying a stack of folded blouses to the display when a customer at the counter called out that they needed help with sizing. Without hesitation, she turned toward them, moving quickly. But, in her rush, she accidentally bumped into a clothing rack, sending a few dresses slipping off their hangers. It was a minor mishap, something that happened in every store, but Victor's reaction was immediate and cruel. He stormed over, eyes blazing, and without hesitation snatched the dresses off the floor and shoved them back into Elena's arms. "Unbelievable. If you're this clumsy now, what's going to happen when you're bigger? Maybe you should take the hint and stop working before you make an even bigger mess," he sneered. The entire store went silent. Customers paused mid-shopping, employees froze in place, and Elena stood there, blinking rapidly as if trying not to cry. She clutched the dresses, her face pale with embarrassment. Damien felt something snap inside him. His hands clenched into fists, but he forced himself to breathe. This wasn't the time to blow his cover, not yet. Instead, he took a slow step forward, looking Victor directly in the eye. "That was unnecessary," Damien said calmly, but his voice carried weight. Victor turned to him, raising an eyebrow. "What did you just say?" Damien held his gaze, his anger barely concealed. "I said that was unnecessary. She's been working harder than anyone here, and all you've done is stand around barking orders." A murmur passed through the employees. Someone near the fitting room exchanged glances with Leo, as if finally realizing that someone was standing up to Victor. Victor scoffed, stepping closer, trying to assert dominance. "And who the hell do you think you are?" Damien's lips curled into a knowing smirk. "You'll find out soon enough." The moment the evening shift began winding down, Damien knew it was time. He had seen enough. The exhaustion on Elena's face, the humiliation in Leo's eyes, the tension in every movement of the staff. This wasn't just a rough day. This was a culture of fear, and it started at the top. And now it is about to end. As the last few customers left, Damien removed his name tag and let it drop onto the counter. The sharp clink against the glass echoed through the now quiet boutique. The employees, sensing something was off, turned to watch him. Then he spoke. His voice was calm, steady, but commanding. "Before we close up, I think it's time I introduce myself properly." A confused silence filled the store. Even Victor, still leaning against the register with his usual smug expression, raised an eyebrow. "My name isn't Daniel," Damien continued, his gaze shifting across the room, locking onto Victor last. "My name is Damien Holt. I own this company." The reaction was instantaneous. Elena's eyes widened as she covered her mouth with her hands. Leo looked like he had forgotten how to breathe. The other employees exchanged stunned glances, while Victor went pale. For a moment, the manager didn't move. Then he let out a forced chuckle, adjusting his tie as if nothing had changed. "All right," he said, forcing a casual laugh. "Very funny, but we've still got closing duties." Damien cut him off with a sharp look. "I don't think you understand, Victor. I've been watching you. Every insult, every order you barked, every time you refused to help your team, I saw it all." Victor's smirk faltered. "You humiliated your employees. You pushed Elena to work through exhaustion, belittled Leo instead of training him properly, and let this store fall apart while you stood around doing nothing." Damien's voice never wavered, but there was an edge of steel beneath it. "And as of right now, you no longer work for this company." The silence was deafening. Victor's mouth opened, then closed. His face twisted as if trying to come up with an excuse, but for once, there was no way out. The power dynamic had shifted entirely, and everyone in the room knew it. You can't just fire me," Victor finally sputtered. "I've been running this store for years." "Yes," Damien said simply, "and that's exactly why it's ending now." The words hit like a hammer, and Victor's shoulders slumped. He glanced around the room, but no one spoke up to defend him, not one employee. With a sharp exhale, Victor turned and grabbed his coat. He muttered something under his breath, but no one cared to listen. As he stormed out of the boutique, the door swung shut behind him, with a finality that felt like justice. For the first time that night, the air in the store felt lighter. The employees, once too afraid to speak, now stood a little taller. And Damien? He was just getting started. As the door slammed shut behind Victor, a heavy silence settled over the boutique. For a few moments, no one moved, as if waiting to see if this was really happening. Then, slowly, the tension in the air began to lift. Damien turned to face his employees, his expression softer but still firm. "I know tonight has been overwhelming," he said, "but let me make one thing very clear. What you've all been dealing with under Victor's management ends today." The employees exchanged uncertain glances, hesitant to believe things could change. Elena, still gripping a blouse she had been folding, finally found her voice. "Does this mean things are really going to be different?" Damien nodded without hesitation. "Yes. Starting now." First, he addressed Elena directly. "You should never have been treated the way you were," he said. "If you need to cut back on your hours or take time off before the baby arrives, you will have my full support. And when you're ready to return, your job will still be here for you." Elena's lips parted slightly in shock. She had spent months pushing through exhaustion, afraid of losing her position. For the first time, she let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice raw with emotion. Then Damien turned his attention to Leo and the rest of the staff. "I know a lot of you have felt unheard, overworked, and disrespected. That changes now. Effective immediately, corporate will be stepping in to support this location until we find a new manager, one who actually values their employees." Leo, still stunned, blinked rapidly. And what about the way things have been? The impossible quotas, the unpaid overtime, the way no one listens to us? Damien met his gaze head-on. I won't make empty promises. I know this store, and likely others, have been struggling, which is why corporate oversight is changing. There will be stricter hiring standards for managers, and I will personally be reviewing employee feedback. If something isn't right, I want to know about it. A murmur rippled through the group. For the first time in a long time, the employees didn't just feel like nameless workers. They felt seen. Damien then outlined a new set of company policies. A direct, anonymous reporting system for employees to voice concerns without fear of retaliation. Mandatory leadership training for managers, ensuring no one like Victor could rise to power again. Fair scheduling and enforced break times so employees weren't pushed to exhaustion. Better wages and benefits, starting with reviewing pay adjustments for long-term employees. The boutique felt different now, lighter somehow. Though the exhaustion in the employees' faces was still there, it was no longer just fatigue. It was hope. Damien looked around at his team, knowing this was only the beginning. This store and this company will be different, and I won't be watching from a distance anymore. I'll be here, listening, working alongside you when needed. For the first time that night, someone smiled, and for Damien, that was the first real sign of change. The next morning, Damien sat in his corporate office, but this time he wasn't just reviewing reports, he was taking action. The experience at the boutique had opened his eyes to a harsh truth. His company had strayed further from his vision than he had ever realized. It wasn't just about one bad manager. It was a culture problem, one that had been ignored for too long. And that ended now. He called an emergency meeting with his senior leadership team. As they filed into the conference room, their expressions were tense. They had all heard about Victor's firing. Good. Let them be uncomfortable. Damien didn't waste time. He laid out everything he had seen, from the way employees were overworked and belittled to how the company's leadership had let managers like Victor run stores unchecked. Some executives tried to justify the issues, blaming the fast-paced nature of retail. Damien shut them down immediately. The problem isn't the industry, he said. It's how we treat the people who keep it running. Over the next hour, he introduced a new company-wide initiative, one that prioritized employee well-being, leadership accountability, and a direct feedback system to prevent toxic workplaces from forming again. Within days, word spread across all Luster locations. Employees felt a shift. For the first time, their concerns were being addressed, and when Damien returned to the boutique a week later, he noticed an immediate difference. The energy had changed. Employees stood taller, smiled more, customers were happier, and the tension that once suffocated the store was gone. As Damien walked out, he knew this was just the beginning, but this time, he wouldn't be watching from a distance. He would be leading from the front. The story of Damien's undercover experience highlights a powerful lesson. A company is only as strong as the people who keep it running. Leadership isn't just about profit margins and expansion. It's about ensuring that the employees who make success possible feel valued, supported, and respected. Damien built his company on a vision of excellence, but he lost sight of the reality on the ground. His experience at the boutique revealed the hidden struggles of his workers, showing that a toxic manager can crush morale, drive employees away, and ultimately harm the entire business. Mistreatment doesn't just hurt workers, it weakens the company itself. The biggest takeaway is that leadership requires presence and accountability. When leaders stay disconnected, bad management thrives, employees suffer, and the brand's reputation deteriorates. But when leaders listen, take action, and foster a culture of fairness, businesses flourish, employees stay, and customers return. By stepping into his employees' shoes, Damien learned that real change starts from within. True leadership isn't about sitting in an office making policies. It's about being present, standing up for what's right, and ensuring that every person in the company is treated with dignity and respect.